Right. Okay, I think we're live.
Okay.
I think we're live. Yes. Good morning. Good morning to everyone who is watching and who will be watching. Welcome to the African Energy Law Series. This is a partnership of the Energy Intelligence and Brooks and Knights Legal Consultants. Energy Intelligence is a energy outfit that provides information, intelligence, research on energy projects, energy information across the continent, right? And Brooks and Knights, we are a clean energy consultancy. We work on clean energy projects. We prepare policy papers on energy issues across the continent. We're based in Nigeria for both energy intelligence and Brooks and Knights, and we are happy to be here to start with this series. The point of the African Energy Law series is to interact with practitioners in African energy and learn their ideas, learn from them, discuss with them, get their viewpoints on some of the important issues affecting energy in the African space. We are legal practitioners, myself and each of the guests that we'll be speaking to. So we'll be addressing these issues from a law and policy perspective to get a
Mhm.
full view of African energy law and what the future is for African energy law. Today, I have a lovely guest with me, and I will give her the opportunity to introduce herself. But before I do that, I want to highlight that this conversation today is particularly on sustainable energy, right? We are as we are working towards sustainable development goals, as we're working through Agenda 2063 of the African Union, sustainable energy is at the forefront of energy policy conversations on the African continent. And it is important that African countries, including Nigeria, address both regulatory and policy issues, project issues, financing issues that drive us toward sustainable energy development. Now, my guest today will speak on her ideas about sustainable energy, about the present state of the Nigerian energy market, about what it is, what the timeline, time frame, and course of action will look like transitioning Nigeria as a state from where we are to a more sustainable energy outlook. Now, I will yield myself to give my guest, Tosin, the opportunity to introduce yourself to Tosin. It is good to have you this morning. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Okay, thank you, Nankem. My name is Tosin Timitimi. I'm an energy lawyer and practitioner. I work at Denton's Acres Law as an associate counsel. So I have an LLM from University of Dundee Center for Energy, Mineral Law and Policy. I'm in international energy law. I'm also a member of the United Nations SDG 7 constituency, which is based on enforcing or enabling energy access across Africa and the world, basically. I'm a seasoned speaker. I've spoken on several panels and I've written publications and articles in this space. I'm an energy enthusiast and looking forward to a better economy, better nation where everyone has equal access to good supply of electricity. So
All right.
thank you for
All
having
right.
me.
I think pleasure to have you, Tosin. Pleasure to meet you. And I look forward to where this conversation will take us. And I will jump right in. Uh, of course, we're having a conversation about sustainable energy development. And sustainable energy is not a new concept. Uh, for Africa, we are in a transition period where we see ourselves moving from unsustainable modes of energy, whether for electricity, whether for household use, whether for transportation, um, towards more sustainable modes or forms of energy generation. But I would like us to start off today's conversation by getting an idea of what you think or how you would explain sustainable energy development?
All right. So thank you for that. Sustainable energy is multifaceted. It means different things to different people in different continents.
Mm-hmm.
But bringing it back home, and with in line with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, sustainable energy basically means the less privileged in the environment, in the economy, the people who don't have access to, who live in remote areas, people who live in also developed areas as well, who don't have 24-hour electricity, who can't afford the electricity. So sustainable energy, I always call it like pillars of energy. Sustainable energy addresses energy poverty, it addresses energy security, it addresses energy access. So these three things, you can break it down further. Access. How do we access this God-given natural resources to provide energies for the nation, for individuals, for corporations? How do we energy poverty as well? Energy poverty can mean two things. It can mean people can't afford energy. It can also mean people can't afford the right type of energy. Like you mentioned, clean cooking. How do we there's people in Nigeria that still use gas cookers, if I might say, while in other nations people are using electric cookers. So how do we really transform to meet this demand? Because to be honest, the demand for energy would continue increasing at a rapid pace, with digitalization, with technology. There would always be need for energy. So how do we make sure that this energy is sustainable in a way that our climate is adequately provided for, in a way that is ethical, in a way that it is fair, and economical as well, in terms of how do we ensure that we're reducing our costs. So just a lot of things, really. I could go on and on.
So I think you've highlighted a number of interesting points. You've spoken about energy poverty, you've spoken about energy access, you've spoken about indoor uses of energy, outdoor uses of energy. I want to streamline our conversation from an electricity angle, right? So if we're thinking of sustainable energy for electricity, what does that look like to you, Tosin? What does sustainable energy in a power context look like?
Okay. So sustainable energy in a power context for big organizations means being able to power using things like mini grids. So being allowed to power industrial estates on renewable energy, on gas generators without inhibition by monopolized institutions. Also being able to, for nations, for Nigeria, being able to access finance required for the growth of our pipelines, our transmission systems, our upstream, downstream. For individuals, being able to, access affordable electricity without, being able to reach a customer care line and being able to be attended to. For people in Badagry, places that are remote places that you probably need like a canoe to get to, they're also receiving this, new age industrialization where, they have TVs, they can watch TV. So basically, just how do we improve the economy as a whole? Because to be honest, energy is the bloodline of an economy. When there's light, you have so much possibilities. There's roads, there is industrialization. I mean, we've done this in the past. We've done this with oil and gas. So can we translate this also to energy? How do we translate the benefits or the knowledge, the technology, the know-how that we've learned that has made Nigeria what it is today? How do we use that same knowledge to transfer it in the electricity space. So yeah.
I think that's a very, very great point. I completely agree with you that electricity is the bloodline of an economy. It drives productivity, it drives efficiency, it drives, in fact, it drives GDP growth, it drives per capita income, it drives industrialization. And I think that you might agree with me that part of what holds back our industrialization capacity as a country is that we are not sufficiently powered. And we're not sufficiently powered in a sustainable, efficient, full capacity way. But just to get back to sustainable energy in a general point, um, compared to other African countries, right, would you say Nigeria's regulatory framework, right? So what's Nigeria's regulatory framework for sustainable energy? We've got the Climate Change Act, we've got our power frameworks, we've got gas plans, our gas map framework, I think it's called. We've got a number of things to transition us, flare gas regulations. We've got quite a number of things to move us away from unsustainable uses of our energy resources to more sustainable uses of those resources. So, do you think, in your experience, that our framework is sufficient to meet the SDG goals? And what would be your suggestions?
To be honest, I think compared to other African countries, we're doing quite a bit. But in a general sense of it, or I think comparing to other African countries, like the West African countries, we're doing okay. I mean, we have a command of resources. If you compare to maybe Cameroon or Guinea, or Ghana, we're doing okay. I mean, Ghana they they just kind of started, getting to the oil and gas space. But for Nigeria, I think the truth is things are happening so fast. You know,
Okay.
especially in the energy space where people are coming with ideas, foreign investments, foreign ideas are coming to Nigeria. It's about how do we keep up with the pace? How do we, innovate to meet these changes? And I remember I've always learned this, that a lot of the changes would come from contracts as opposed to regulation, in the sense that,
Okay.
yeah, a lot of it will be from, agreements. How can
So, do
we
you
agree?
favor? Sorry to butting briefly. It seems like you favor a market-focused approach to innovation versus a regulatory command focused approach. Is that what you're saying?
Um,
So, a market focused approach really is participants in the market deciding how they want to innovate, right? While regulation is the regulator or the government coming in and saying participants have to behave in this way.
yeah, I mean, it's two-pronged. One, from experience, I've seen entrepreneurs with brilliant ideas, and they come to Nigeria. They want to set up they want to set up a prosumer relationship where a consumer is um, providing electricity to the next consumer and being paid for it. And this is groundbreaking ideas, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just we don't have the regulatory backing to do that. We don't have, like, if they go ahead to do this, they might end up in courts. So I think there is definitely a place for regulation, and I know that the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, they're on it. I know they're constantly innovating to try to meet up with these changes. But then going back to the contract issues, if we can sit with someone who has maybe a franchise rights over an area, and discuss with them, how do we partner with you? What's your field development plan? It makes things a bit faster, and then you just maybe have like a no objection to the regulatory commission. So
Mm.
you know what I mean? So I definitely see the market playing a bigger role in terms of how quickly and how things are moving. It's so rapid. We're talking about gas generators today, and we're talking about this, and we're just not there yet in terms of regulation. So,
Okay. I think what I understand from what you're saying is we should have a synergy between market approaches, which is what you refer to as contracts, right? People coming together in the market to decide to innovate. And but that shouldn't be hindered. It should rather be supported by regulation, right? Because we know regulation can hinder market approaches in the same way that regulation can spur market innovation, right? So, for example, the flare gas regulations really revolutionized how flare gas was used in the Nigerian oil and gas space in a way that it created this new thriving market for flare gas as an entity, right? As opposed to oil and non-associated gas markets, right? So I do think, and I'm sure that we agree on this, that regulation is important, but it should not be a hindrance to innovation. It should make way for innovation. That being said, the regulator, which is the case in most industries, is usually slow to innovate. Right? Market is a
yeah,
lot faster. Market is a lot faster to
yeah,
market participants who play in the space are finding it a lot quicker actually to innovate to meet the problems that they are facing in a way that the regulator, who is a, let's say, independent observer, may not spring up to. So I definitely agree with you on the point of a combined response. I think in Nigeria, we do try to straddle that line a bit, I think, in our regulation. We want the regulators to be innovating, and we want markets to
yeah.
innovate. Sometimes it can cause some tensions. um, so I don't know that you would agree with this, but would you say that we are in a energy transition phase, whether as a country or as a continent? Would you say that we're in an energy transition phase?
Um, I'm laughing because, like we were discussing earlier, one just as a lawyer, as a practitioner in the space, you have to continually be current with what's going on in the industry and just, a lot of things are, you, a lot of things are bought. You just pick something from a jurisdiction and bring it. It's not always clear cut. And I'm just very glad that, the international pressures are not as high as it was before. I mean, now you read UN documents, you read World Organization documents, and you see that there is now more of a downplay of how quickly, there's a 2030 target of the United Nations, and there's the other targets. But I think people are starting to realize that it would not be equitable, or it would not be fair for us to, request that as Nigerians or as oil producing countries with abundance of resources, we're just going to transition to using electric cars. I mean, there's so many restrictions. There's so, like, Nigeria. I don't know if I would I don't know how I would enter an automated car in Nigeria. Like, I think there is definitely,
Can be possible. Can be possible.
it can, to be honest. But I think people are starting to realize that we have these resources for a good reason. And to be honest, big oil is still always going to be in this economy, in the system. Especially, they're slowing down. We're slowing down how much oil and gas we produce. I mean, some countries are still using coal. I don't even want to mention names of the companies that are still using coal. They know themselves, you know. Um, so asking for, we're transitioning because, to be honest, we're not in doubt of the effects that climate change has on the economy or the environment. We're not in doubt of the effects of, you know, pollution, but then we have to also realize that we have these resources, and how can we utilize these resources? We have gas in abundance, and I know that like you mentioned, the gas flare regulations, there's so much that Nigeria is currently doing to ensure that our gas is being utilized in the most beneficial way for our power industries. I know there are domestic gas supply obligations that are required by oil and gas companies, you know, to make sure that whatever is being taken, exported, is also benefiting our nation as well. Um, so, to be honest, I think the European world in general have started realizing that we Nigerians, we Africans need to exploit our resources. That is where we are right now. You know, if we're talking about cost and effects, for us, it's more affordable to use gas to power our turbines, our existing turbines, than to use, you know, try to find more financing or try to get small, medium enterprises to look for grants up and down. For us, it's just we have an established system in place. So how do we, you know, wiggle in some time to exploit our resources and use them for our own benefits, you know? So I know natural gas is definitely the future. It is definitely a clean, first of all, it's a cleaner fuel. So there's always this argument about is natural gas is natural gas
Sustainable.
sustainable? Is it a clean fuel? Is it how many methane compounds are inside natural gas? But I know it's been proven that it's half the amount of emission that, you know, a coal fire station would use, especially if you now back it up with new technologies like carbon capture storage. So I think natural gas is definitely our transition fuel. And
So to
if
interrupt you briefly, I think that's an interesting point that you make, right? So Nigeria's electricity overlay, especially for on-grid electricity by your standards, is quite clean, it's quite green, it's quite sustainable because primarily our generation component is gas-based, right? I don't know that we have any coal-fired plants on grid.
operation, no.
I don't think
Yeah.
so. We use gas, we use hydro, right? And then to the extent of unsustainable uses of electricity or sources of electricity, it's mostly the distributed off grid generation we have in our homes and offices with diesel and petrol fired generators, right? But generally, our grid electricity is actually on the much cleaner side when you compare it with even more developed countries, right? And I think you're very, very right that in transition, in energy transition, we have to favor our existing resource landscape, right? So if we have rich gas reserves, and gas is a cleaner fuel, and gas technology is clean and sustainable, actually, at least compared to much of the existing energy generation, fossil fuel energy generation. How do we exploit that to meet our energy needs, to ensure energy security, to stop energy poverty, to ensure energy access, which are the three pillars of sustainable energy that you have quoted? So I definitely agree with you on that point. And functionally, what you're saying is we have always been transitioning as a country. Our energy has always, because we
Yeah.
haven't. I mean, I think for us, my opinion, for us as a country, our primary, our, those three things are important, but energy security and access really. Security because obviously we don't have enough energy to meet our needs,
Yeah.
right? So how do we how do we get to that point? How do we reach parity on demand and supply for energy? And I think you are right, you're very right. And I think there's something important you said actually that I've been meaning to highlight, which is sustainable energy development goals for Africa has to have African input, has to be stylized in a way that is Afrocentric. It can't be international commentators or international policymakers making policies for Africa without understanding the continental, the local, the geographical, and the social political landscape, right? So I can't impute a British idea or an American idea or a Chinese idea and bring it to Nigeria because the cultures are different, the landscape is different, the geography is different, the money in the pockets is also different.
Yeah.
So I think you've made some very, 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 very actual great points on achieving sustainable energy development from an African perspective. Thinking about Nigeria, I think I like what you said about markets and innovation, about exploiting our existing resources in a way that is sustainable, because that is also a part of sustainable energy development, right? So I think we are getting to the close of our discussion. I think it has been a very, very interesting, although brief chat. I think it is a very interesting. I'll give you the opportunity to make some concluding remarks. Maybe there's any one or two things that you feel like you should have said.
Yeah.
Like to say.
So, I mean, I think the only part that I didn't touch on would be renewable energy as, for entrepreneurship, I guess. So, I mean, part of energy security means that, we can switch from one type of energy to another source of energy. And it's just very inspiring to see what young people are doing these days in the renewable space, small to medium startups, large startups, large startups, to be honest. So it's just very inspiring to see what they're doing in the renewable space. So I just guess I just hoping that regulation would meet with that. Have this regulators will have discussions with young entrepreneurs trying to enter the energy space and see how they can actually do these things legally. So yes, that would be my final thoughts.
I think that's good. I think that's a very, very good place to end this nice brief chat. Thank you, Tosin, for giving us of your time. This has been a very, very actually enlightening conversation. I have had a very pleasant time. I think that everything you have said resonates very strongly with me, and I'm sure with practitioners in sustainable energy in Africa, right? We want African solutions. We want renewable energy. We want energy security. We want innovation in our markets. We want regulation to support that innovation. I mean, we want energy justice. We want access for lower income, like people and families and communities to energy. All of this really encapsulates sustainable energy development as an ideal that Africa as a continent is trying to achieve. And Nigeria in particular is looking to achieve. Thank you so much to all of our guests, to everybody who has been with us on this live stream. We look forward to having you guys come again to join us on our next episode. I think I'm not clear when that is, but I'm sure it will be communicated by Energy Intelligence. Thank you, Tosin. My name is Nanke Williams, and it has been my pleasure to have you on this stream. Have a good morning.
And you too, darling. Bye.
Bye.